Coaching staffs are such a huge part of NFL team success, and because we have gotten through all the position groups with my tier list that I've done previously, I'm now going to move on to grading the coaching staffs. It's going to be a little bit different than the tier list, as I'm just going to be giving a letter grade to all the coaching staff, starting off with this video in the AFC only. It'll be split into two videos. We'll do NFC next week. But without further ado, let's get started with our first team, the Buffalo Bills. Now, they have head coach Sean McDermott returning for his ninth season. They finished 13-4 last season, getting to the AFC Championship game and losing to the Chiefs. Once again, their offensive coordinator is Joe Brady for the third straight season, and their second-year coordinator at defense is Bobby Babich. Now, they did grade out very well offensively, second best in scoring. That's great. Top 10 in both pass and run, which is very nice, assisted by the fact that Josh Allen does run a little bit, as James Cook didn't have the best raw numbers, and Ray Davis behind him did have a good season as well as a rookie. Their defense did have some problems, specifically against the pass. You did see them address that in the draft. But with Sean McDermott being a defensive-minded head coach, I would expect their defense to improve a little bit. It was kind of a transition year for them as they were trying to get younger after they had gotten a little old on the defense, especially in the secondary. So hopefully they see continued progression, and their pass rush can continue to improve as it has been. Despite all the struggles in the passing game, they still did finish only 12th in scoring defensive wise, and with a plus 24 turnover ratio and point differential of 157, I don't think they're going to have any problems, and I would put them in a square A for my grade for the Buffalo Bills here. Something to also note is if Josh Allen and the Bills offense has this kind of season, look out for Joe Brady to be the hot head coaching candidate going into the next coaching cycle. Moving on now to the Miami Dolphins, who finished at 8-9 last season. They have head coach Mike McDaniel returning for his fourth season. They have offensive coordinator Frank Smith, who's been here the whole time, with McDaniel down in Miami, and defensive coordinator Anthony Weaver returning for his second season. Now, Weaver did a really good job last season as the defense, as you can see, ranked top 10 in scoring, pass, and rush, which is really good. However, they did have a -5 turnover ratio. So the one thing they were not able to do was create enough turnovers. The offense did have some issues despite Devon Achane having a great individual season. The rushing game in Miami wasn't spectacular, and the passing game wasn't great either, which is to be expected when you lose your starting quarterback. But I do think the Dolphins have to create some wins and some positive momentum this season for this coaching staff to be able to continue to get to do what they would like to. I don't think the ownership in Miami appreciated taking a step back last season, but I think at the end of the day, it all kind of does depend on Tua's health. But I also do see Mike McDaniel as a very good offensive mind. His ability to handle a locker room, I think, is a little questionable, and some of the handling that he has had with the quarterback position when Tua is out is also questionable. So I am only going to give the Miami Dolphins a B rating for this coming season. Next up, we have the New York Jets, who hired a new head coach in former Detroit Lions defensive coordinator Aaron Glenn. He enters his first season with two new coordinators as well in Tanner Eggstrand and Steve Wilks. Now, it is interesting to note that Aaron Glenn is a defensive backgrounded coach, and he did hire a veteran defensive coordinator and I believe, first-time offensive coordinator in Engstrand. However, he does inherit some talent, especially on the defensive side of the ball, as despite having Brees Hall in the backfield, they finished 31st in rushing, 25th in scoring. They did finish 16th in passing, which when you have Garrett Wilson and Devontae Adams, you should finish near the middle of the pack at least. So some good things to say about what they did last year, but -2 turnover ratio isn't great. -66 point differential isn't great. I'm not expecting an immediate turnaround for this team. It'll be interesting to see what Justin Fields is able to do with Engstrand, but I do like where Aaron Glenn is coming from, and I think him hiring a defensive-minded, a experienced, defensive coordinator does allow him to be more of a head coach, which would mirror what Dan Campbell does out there in Detroit. So I am going to give them a solid C plus going into this season. I think it was a good hire for the Jets. Now they just need to put it together and not fall off like they normally do. Moving on now to the last AFC East team, we have the New England Patriots with their head coach Mike Vrabel. They finished 4-13 last season, but I do think they made one of the better hires of the coaching cycle. I think Vrabel was the top head coaching candidate out there, including Ben Johnson, because of Vrabel's proven success at a place where success has been a little hard to come by in Tennessee. I do still question why Vrabel was fired at all, but they obviously wanted to change the culture a little bit, and I think New England wants some of that culture that Vrabel is going to bring. So really good hire for them. We'll see what happens with Josh McDaniels. He has been a better offensive coordinator in his career than head coach, but his style is a little jagged. We'll see how that works with Drake May. Now, May showed a lot of signs last season, but they did still finish 32nd, which is last in the league in passing and 30th in scoring. So their offense did not have a good season last year. But a good sign was their passing game finished well at 10th defensively, last season. And they did have a very bad turnover ratio of -11 and a point differential of -128. It'll be interesting to see how quickly Mike Vrabel is able to turn around that defense, as you don't typically see in the last 20 years a New England Patriots defense being this poor. But having a good pass defense to begin is a really good sign for Vrabel, who defensive mind, he's a culture guy, can bring a level of toughness to this team. But it, at the end of the day, is all about developing Drake May into a franchise quarterback, which he did flash last season. So a lot of that will fall on Josh McDaniels and Vrabel's culture being able to cultivate that growth. We'll see how it goes. I will give them a solid B minus. I think that'll probably be as high as I give a first time hire, just because Vrabel has experience. I really like what they put together or what he brings to the table. What they put together, we'll see how that plays out throughout the season. But a good place to start for a New England Patriots team that did not have a good season last year. Switching over now to the AFC North, we head to the Baltimore Ravens, who finished at 12-5 last season, losing in the divisional round. The Ravens have, of course, John Harbaugh as their head coach, returning for his 18th season as a head coach, one of the longest tenured coaches in the league. He has Todd Monken and Zach Orr returning as coordinators, Monken for his third season, Orr for his second. The only place where they really had trouble last season was defending the pass, which they had a lot of injuries. So it's a little understandable. So hopefully that'll be able to turn around. But the first ranking rush offense and the first ranking rush defense is a great place to start. They were also +6 in turnover differential, and I had one of the best point differentials in +157. This was just a very, very good team. The combination of Derrick Henry and Lamar Jackson on offense was able to put together a lot of success running the ball, passing as well, which is a testament to Todd Monken's system. And Orr's got some things to work out. They were ninth in scoring, so that's not bad, despite giving up the 31st most yardage passing. I think part of that is that they played the Bengals, who torch them every single time. They play them twice a year. But either way, a really, really good place to be starting at for the Ravens coaching wise. So I will give them a solid A. I think that this is one of the better coaching staffs in the league, and their player development and their stats and record back that up. Next up is the Pittsburgh Steelers, with Mike Tomlin returning for his 19th season as head coach of the Steelers. They finished 10-7, losing in the wild card round, last season. They have Arthur Smith as the returning offensive coordinator for his second season, and Terrell Austin returns for his fourth season as defensive coordinator. Now, they had a very interesting situation last year at quarterback, where they had Justin Fields, who was winning them games, playing well, but they still decided to move on to Russell Wilson. They now have Aaron Rodgers back there at quarterback, with Mason Rudolph backing him up after Fields said, no, thank you. And Wilson decided to go elsewhere as well. So I don't know how that'll work out. They also lost Najee Harris, but they did draft a guy who they're hoping can take his place. We'll see how that goes. So the coaching staff does have a lot of question marks. However, Arthur Smith's experience as a head coach and an offensive coordinator in the past does lend you to believe that they will still be a good team, and they always crank out a good defensive team. They were 25th against the pass. I question, like with the Ravens, if playing the Bengals has something to do with that. But Either way, you have to be better than 27th passing and 16th scoring if you want to continue to be able to win in this league. They were only plus 33 in point differential, which isn't great for a playoff team, but they were plus 16 in turnover ratio, so they were definitely creating a lot of turnovers, which is always good to see. Is a testament to Terrell Austin and his defensive staff and what Mike Tomlin preaches with his culture. One of the interesting things that I always like to note about the Steelers is that they always finish above 500 or at least 500. That's great in theory. I do think that there comes a time when you kind of stall as an organization and your message can not run stale, but can reach its limit. And I question if Mike Tomlin and the Steelers have hit that impasse, similar to Andy Reid with the Eagles. It is hard to let a good coach go. The Steelers aren't known for letting coaches go in general. I mean, Tomlin's going into his 19th season. But how much longer can they continue to accept mediocrity? It's an interesting question. And if they do have a bad season, finally, then is Tomlin allowed to make the draft pick that'll most likely be a quarterback next season and go from there? We will see what all that happens, but this is still a great coaching staff, and I give them an A, just like the Ravens. And yeah, despite all my question marks, I still think it's a great staff, and other teams would be envious of this staff. Next up is the Cincinnati Bengals, who just missed the wild card spot at 9-8. They did have a nice streak at the end of the season to overcome a bad start to the year. A lot of their issues were documented last season on defense, but head coach Zach Taylor did retain his position. He did get rid of longtime defensive coordinator Lou Amarillo. So Al Gordon replaces him, and Dan Pitcher continues his second season as offensive coordinator. They were clearly above and beyond the best passing offense in the league. Sixth in scoring as well as the passing can stand to note, but 30th in rushing, that's not good. It does make the team very one-dimensional. Despite a good fantasy year from Chase Brown, his actual numbers and the team's rushing numbers were not good, and I think that is something that needs to improve for this team to be able to hit their offensive ceiling. And then if you look on defense, they don't grade out horribly against the rush or against the pass, but 26th in scoring you just can't have. They were plus 3 in turnover ratio, which is good, and plus 38 in point differential, which is also fairly good. But at the same time, you can't have such a big disparity being 6th in scoring and 26th in defensive scoring that it just creates this gap, and this animosity can be created between the offensive and defensive staff or personnel units, and you don't want that. There's some good locker room leadership out there in Cincinnati, but what they really need is for this defense to come together, and it'll be interesting to see if it does, because Trey Henderson is not signed. Shamar Stewart, their first-round pick, is also not signed, so the front office is still playing the Cincinnati games that they play, but Zach Taylor is a solid head coach. He has taken the Bengals to the playoffs. He has developed Burrow into a really good quarterback. There's something to say about that, but I still think I'm only going to give them a B. I don't love what's happening out there in Cincinnati with their staff. I think that it's just a mediocre staff being propped up by great players, and how much longer can those great players prop up mediocre staff? We'll see. We'll see how long it takes. But at the end of the day, Zach Taylor, there is worse head coaches out there than Zach Taylor. So giving him another shot, I do not. I don't hate on the Bengals for making that decision. We'll see if it was the right one. Last up in the AFC North is the Browns and Kevin Stefanski returning for his sixth season as a head coach after going 3-14 last season. He did replace his offensive coordinator. Tommy Rees is now in there, and Jim Schwartz is still his defensive coordinator, who is a veteran back there, and I think that he works very well with Stefanski, so that's not a surprise decision. Interesting that the Browns decided to keep Stefanski. I don't think it's the wrong decision. I do question, because I don't expect him to be a good team this year, if they will keep him again. And if they keep him again, then they obviously think that they have the solution here, which, I don't think is the wrong choice. However, he is an offensive coach. They didn't have a lot at the quarterback position. I will give that to them. But 32nd in scoring, 29th in rushing, and 22nd in passing is not good. I know some of that is on Jameis Winston, whose decision making is bad and led to a horrible turnover ratio of -22 and a point differential of -177, which is not how you have a good team. Well, they finished 32nd in offensive scoring, and they only fared fairly better defensive scoring wise, finishing 28th. They were 12th against the pass, which is good, and they have talent in the defensive backfield, so that makes sense. 21st against the rush, though, is not really what you want to see, especially when you play teams like the Ravens and the Steelers, who want to run the ball a lot and control the clock that way. You need to be able to stop that. But this is really all about Kevin Stefanski being able to continue his culture, and if the Browns and their owner are going to continue to allow it to happen, at the end of the day, it might be a situation where Jimmy Haslam is looking at it and going, I messed this team up by forcing the Watson move and giving him all that money, and now they're saddled with it, and they shouldn't pay the price for that. A lot of respect to him if that's what he's doing, but results need results. They drafted a third and a fifth round quarterback. They have two rookies that they can try to develop. If Stefanski is a great offensive mind that's going to lead them to the promised land that they want to get to, then he should be able to do something with one of those guys. I mean, they drafted both of them, so they believe somewhat in Sanders and Gabriel. So whether it's Joe Flacco or Kenny Pickett out of the gate, I expect one of those guys, those rookies, to make some starts. And if they don't look good, then is Stefanski really the guy? Either way, I think this grade that I'm going to give them is probably a solid C. Like I said, I believe in Stefanski. If he does get fired at some point, I would expect him to bounce back quickly as an OC somewhere and then get another head coaching job somewhere else. But that still doesn't mean that this is the right situation for him. With a first-year coordinator, try to fix this offense and develop these quarterbacks, I just don't know how it's going to look. So I think a C fits best for them. Moving right along to the Houston Texans, who won the AFC North last season with a 10-7 record. They did not have the greatest follow-up season to their surprising run 2 years ago now. Their offensive coordinator did get replaced. Nick Hawley comes in for D'Amico Ryans, who's entering his third season. Matt Burke's been his defensive coordinator since he got there. Like I said, their offensive numbers weren't great, finishing 21st in passing, 15th in rushing, and 19th in scoring. That's not great when you have what it was supposed to be an ascending top-level elite quarterback in C.J. Stroud, who I think did hit a sophomore slump and take a step back next season. So it'll be on Collie to be able to remedy that coming into this season. Their defense was good as expected with D'Amico Ryans, a defensive-minded head coach, and they had a plus 10 turnover ratio, which is great. However, they did win their division kind of in spite of themselves as they had a flat 0 points differential, which is a little surprising for a team that was 3 games above 500, going 10-7. I do think this is a decent staff. I love D'Amico Ryans as a head coach. I liked the hire when it was made. I still like it now. I think their defense, which is young, will continue to improve. And I think that CJ Stroud has more in him. It's whether Ryan's found the right guy to pull it out of him. That remains to be seen. But for now, I'm going to give the Texans a B for their rating. I think that they have an above average staff, but with an unproven coordinator and Collie, we'll see what happens going into the season. The Indianapolis Colts were the runner-up to the Texans last season in the AFC South, finishing with an 8-9 record, despite very poor quarterback play. Shane Steichen returns for his third season as a head coach, and he does return his offensive coordinator, Jim Bob Cooter. They do bring in former Cincinnati Bengals defensive coordinator Lou Anarumo to be their defensive coordinator for the first season, which they'll need some help because they finished with a bottom third defense overall, 26th passing, 24th rushing, 24th scoring. They just did not have a good defense. And they didn't have a good passing game either, with Richardson getting hurt and being ineffective. And then they had a lot of problems at quarterback last season. They did finish 8th in rushing, which is a testament to what Jonathan Taylor is able to do running the ball and what Richardson's able to do with his legs. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Daniel Jones or Anthony Richardson, who's already hurt again. They finished 17th in scoring, which is not great, but it's a starting point at least. -4 turnover ratio and point differential of -50 just means that they were a little lucky to even be at 500 or near 500 at 8 and 9. So they will need to take a step forward in most facets, excuse me, of the game to be able to improve themselves. You know, a little bit better passing game and just better defense will probably get them there, especially in a what is perceived as a poor division in the AFC South. But I don't have the most faith that Steichen and Cooter and Anarumo can do that. So I am only going to give the Colts a C rating. Moving on now to the Jacksonville Jaguars, who finished 4-13 last season, second worst in the division because the Titans, who we'll talk about next, were even worse. They have an entirely new coaching staff with Liam Cohen coming in over from the Buccaneers. He tabbed Grant Udinsky and Anthony Capinelli as their coordinators. They are both first-time coordinators, so not a lot of experience on this staff, and they don't inherit much from last season as they finished essentially bottom third in every single category that we talk about here, as well as -15 in turnover ratio and -115 in point differential. So I guess if you don't look at a positive, they're not as bad in point differential as some of the other teams that have the records down here, but they just did not have a lot go right for them last season. So we'll see what Liam Cohen is able to do with his new staff coming in. I think the health and resurgence of Trevor Lawrence is at the top of this list, which is why Cohen got this job, with his work with Baker Mayfield being well noted in Tampa. So we will see how the Jaguars go, but I think overall, nothing too inspiring for this coaching staff. So I'll just give them a C, kind of an incomplete grade because no one has experience doing what they're going to be doing, so it's really tough to tell what's going to happen. I don't hate the Cohen hire, so I won't push it any lower, but I think a C is a good indication of where they stand right now. Up next is the Tennessee Titans. They had the worst record in the league last season at 3-14. That gave them the dubious honor of drafting number one, and they took a quarterback, Cam Ward, which will be what all of this season is about. Brian Callahan, returns for his second season, with his coordinators also returning. They did not have good numbers last season, kind of epitomized by a -16 turnover ratio and a -149 point differential. The only thing they kind of did well was running the ball. They only finished 20th, which is better than the 25th, 30th, 32nd, 26th, 27th they finished everywhere else. So it's hard to be confident in the ability of this staff. I know it's not a talented team. I think if you go back through the tier listings videos that I've done, they don't rank, I think, anything better than average in any of the categories. So they're not a talented team, but I don't think this is a great staff either. So I'm going to give them our first D grade. Obviously, this whole season depends on Cam Ward. If Cam Ward looks good, but their numbers stay the same, I'm sure this staff will get another season. But it'll be interesting either way to see what happens. The Kansas City Chiefs lead off our last division, the AFC West, and the AFC reigning champions, Kansas City Chiefs. They have Andy Reid returning for his 13th season at the helm. They also have two returning coordinators in Matt Nagy, who's returning for his third season, and Steve Spagnuolo, one of the better defensive coordinators in the league, returning for his seventh season. He's also one of the most decorated coordinators in the league. They did have this weird thing last year where they won 15-2. They won 15 games. It's a lot of games. But a plus 59 point differential, winning 15 games out of 17 is just crazy. And it just shows how close a lot of their games were. And a turnover ratio of +6 means that they obviously did a good job taking care of the ball, but they also weren't, it's not like it's +20 and it's like, oh, that's why they were winning games. They just got a turnover. Um, didn't exactly play out that way. They did look like the entire season was just to get them in a position to win games, to get into the playoff without pushing anything. Especially after once Pacheco went down, they kind of just went into not survivor mode, but they kind of just went into self-preservation mode, I guess is the better way to put it, especially with Kelsey very clearly, I think, having lost a step athletically. I think mentally he is still a top level tight end, and I think that he has the body and the catch radius to continue to be a top tight end. But I think his days of being just a top receiving target period are over. That's not a bad thing. It's not a negative thing. It's just a statement on how I feel. But the real, like I said, the real good job that Spagnuolo does with the defense is what I want to kind of focus on: the fourth ranked scoring defense, eighth ranked rush defense, and 18th passing. That's really good, especially when, like I said, they didn't really blow anyone out. I think they might have had one game where they won by more than single digits. So they didn't blow anyone out despite winning 15 games. So they also, I don't think they were putting their defense in a great position every single time either. Their defense did a great job. It's a very talented defense, and I expect them to actually maybe even be better this coming season. But I think clearly this is one of the best coaching staffs in the league. This is a very easy A for the Kansas City Chiefs, and I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. Next up is the Los Angeles Chargers with second-year head coach Jim Harbaugh. He returns both of his coordinators, Greg Roman and Jesse Minter. Now, the job that Minter and Harbaugh did with the defense is very impressive. However, it was a little alarming to see Justin Herbert kind of stall. He'd kind of been stalling previously, which is why Staley was let go, Harbaugh's predecessor. But Harbaugh did a great job turning this team around. They had a plus 101 point differential, plus 12 turnover ratio, and the best scoring defense, which is great. They finished 11-6, getting the top wildcard spot in the AFC. It will be interesting to see how Roman's able to do with Najee Harris taking over for J.K. Dobbins. They also drafted the kid from North Carolina, Omarion Hampton. I think that he will eventually overtake Harris at some point this year. But the 11th ranked scoring offense is good. However, that's not really supported in their raw yardage numbers, as they were 19th and 17th in passing and rushing, respectively. Seventh in passing defense is really good. I like their turnover ratio. They protect the ball, they run the clock, and they win games, and that's always good. I do think I'm going to give this coaching staff an A minus, and the minus is only because I want to see more out of Justin Herbert. Because I think if this is all Herbert is, I don't know if they're going to be able to get over the hump of the other teams in the AFC. Head coach Sean Payton enters his third season with the Denver Broncos. He returns both coordinators, Joe Lombardi and Vance Joseph. They finished 10-6 last season, arguably getting lucky with the Chiefs kind of phoning in that last game of the season and allowing them to get into the playoffs rather than the Bengals, which I'm sure the Chiefs appreciated, as the Bengals have been the only team to beat them in recent years in the playoffs. The Broncos grade out very well defensively, except against the pass, where they were 19th. They did finish third in both scoring and rush defense, which is good. A plus 6 turnover ratio and a plus 114 point differential, both very good numbers. And actually, the point differential is indicative that they might have actually underperformed record wise. Their offense, however, does leave a lot to be desired, as rookie Bo Nix only had the offense finishing at 20th passing and 16th rushing. Now, 16th rushing is actually pretty good considering the fact that they did not have good um, running backs last season. They do not return good running backs either, so we'll see where that number goes. But I think overall, this coaching staff is experienced, and for that reason, I will give them a B plus. Our last team to discuss today is the Las Vegas Raiders, who finished last season in the last spot in the AFC West at 4-13. They did hire a new head coach in Pete Carroll. He did retain the previous defensive coordinator, Patrick Graham, but he did bring in very experienced offensive coordinator, Chip Kelly. It'll be interesting to see what Kelly's able to do with the offense and new quarterback, Geno Smith. There were some signs last season with their defense, whereas their scoring wasn't great at 26th. They did finish 15th and 13th. That's top half of the league in both pass and rush yardage. So those are good signs. They did, however, not create a lot of turnovers, as they had a negative 16 turnover ratio and a minus 125 point differential, which is not good. Finishing 32nd in rushing is horrible, and 29th in scoring. They just did not have a good offense last season, and it led to all these losses. Pete Carroll, what he brings with him is culture, and what Chip Kelly's offense will hopefully be able to bring is some variety and some spice. We'll see what actually happens. Chip Kelly has become a little, I don't want to say dated, but a little outpaced, I guess, by guys like Cliff Kingsbury in the offensive scheme game. But he still puts together good schemes and puts together good offensive units at least. So this staff is a very experienced staff. I'm going to be interested to see what they do. I will just leave them at a C plus, as I think that I think the Pete Carroll hire was great, but he is older. It'll be interesting to see how long he's actually able to do the job, and if Raiders are able to win while he's at the helm. I don't know necessarily if that's true, but I do know that they had Pete Carroll had John Schneider with him in Seattle, who is a great GM, and I don't know if he has that in Las Vegas. It'll remain to be seen. It'll also remain to be seen if he was developing the players Schneider gave him, or if Schneider gave him great players that fit Carroll's scheme. We don't know, but this will be the opportunity for us all to find out. That has been our video today. I hope you guys enjoyed. Please leave a like if you did, and a comment if you have anything that you'd like to discuss with me. I'm more than happy to answer those. And on the screen, I'll have 2 videos. Please subscribe for more sports content.